here back on the Nerdy Rich channel, and today we're going to be talking about the second show in the Dexter revival saga, and that is Dexter Original Sin. So Dexter Original Sin is the origin story of how Dexter ultimately became a serial killer. So this is his first year of becoming a true-blooded serial killer. So we get to learn how he get his methods of how to kill and everything like that. We even get some unanswered questions answered from the original show. So in this video, I will be spoiling not only the event of Dexter New Blood, but I also will be spoiling Dexter Season 1, because there is a character that appears in this season that's going to play a huge part for this season, and also going to play a major part during Season 1. So if you have not seen original Dexter and Dexter New Blood, you won't understand what's going on. So a quick story. I originally watched the series, the original Dexter first, obviously, Dexter New Blood, then I watched Resurrection, and then I watched Dexter Original Sin, because I was like, oh, Original Sin is the origin story, so I don't need to watch that. But unfortunately, right when I hit the first episode of this show, it shows the ending of New Blood. So spoiler for New Blood coming in 1, 2, 3. Dexter gets shot by Harrison at the end of the show because he successfully was able to kill the main killer of the show. And of course, which his picture will be right here, that's the main killer of Dexter New Blood. So they successfully was able to kill him, but then him and Harrison had a back and forth because Harrison seen fully the dark side of Dexter, and he got scared of that. And of course, he decided, oh, I need to take out my father because my father has killed so many people and stuff like that. And of course, he finds out all the stuff Dexter was lying to him about throughout the entire time. While you also have Angela trying to, of course, capture Dexter, and also have Angel, who also got into Harrison's head. And eventually, it led into Harrison shooting Dexter. So right at the beginning of this show, we're actually seeing Dexter in the back of Angela's car because Angela decided not to let Dexter just bleed out and die. She tried to revive him so she can get him arrested and all this other thing, while she let Harrison, the one who shot Dexter, get away. And we won't see him for at least one more show. The next show we actually get to continue off in that storyline. But anyway, so Dexter's in the back of Angela's car, like almost bleeding out, but not fully bleeding out, because he can get to the hospital. And then obviously there's another show, so we know Dexter's going to be fine. So Dexter throughout this entire show is in between surgery and stuff like that, so he's in and out of consciousness. So that's how we have the event of this entire season. It's a pass. So okay, we got that out the way. Good. And I am going to be spoiling one of the killers in here, not the other killer, because the one killer in here has to do with Season 1. And because we're going over Dexter's origin story, that person's going to play a huge part into it, because that literally leads into why Dexter becomes who he is throughout the entire franchise. So okay, let's get into the actual story. So it takes place while Dexter is in his like middle to the last year in college. But of course, we know that he doesn't finish college. He ends up going straight into Miami Metro. He gets recruited by actually a young Masuka and his boss at the time, because they see Dexter's able to figure out a case that they were working on very easily just by looking at pictures and stuff like that, to the point where it helped them catch one of the killers they were tracking of, like in the early parts of the season, while the two main ones were still going around doing their own things. And so he ends up joining, and of course at this time we know that Dexter's stepfather, Harry Morgan's still working at Miami Metro at this time. So of course he eventually joins him, and it ends up working out better, because now it keeps a way for Harry to keep a closer eye on Dexter to make sure he doesn't become a serial killer a lot sooner than, you know, they plan for it to happen. And of course we already know thanks to the events of the final season of Dexter, so spoiler for the final season of Dexter, we know that Evelyn and him were talking about that, and that's ultimately how Harry reveals his code. But I think is hilarious about this, a little fun fact, is that the writers of Original Sin straight up admitted that they didn't write the Evelyn plot in here at all. They was like, oh yeah, I forgot it. We quote unquote forgot that she existed, so we just didn't write her in the script. No, they just decided not to add it, because even they thought that was a stupid idea for Harry, who's been a cop for so long, to build this great code to keep his son from becoming an even more darker serial killer like every other serial killer we're going to see for the rest of the show, and actually turn him into one that's actually doing some good, even though he is killing people. And I love that the showrunners did that. I thought that was very hilarious, and I'm kind of glad they did stick with that. So it ultimately leads into Dexter helping out on the two serial killer case, because there's one that has to do with more of a kid getting kidnapped. So now everybody Miami Metro is split because they're trying to also catch the other killer that's going around in here, which I will spoil now who that is, so spoilers. And that is, of course, the ice truck killer himself, Brian Moser. We get to see a younger Brian Moser, and of course he does interact with Dexter a lot earlier in the timeline than we thought, because we knew that all the season one they interacted and stuff like that. But of course we also know that he's been following Dexter his entire life, to the point where he knew that Harry Morgan is the one who took him, because we actually get to learn a lot how Harry Morgan met their mom, how their mom and him had an affair, and that led into ultimately her death, and why Dexter and Brian ultimately both became serial killers. And we get to learn even more context of why he was always in the kind of the loop of Dexter, even though he's been like shipped around the system his entire life. And we get to learn the context of even how that happened. And that's the one thing I really did love about this show, is that it gives a lot of context and answers to a lot of questions we had since the original Dexter. And it's great because we finally get the full context of everything. And we also get to see, of course, a younger Dexter, who is, of course, wants to start his serial killer career. But, of course, Harry trying everything in his power to keep him from going down that route. But, unfortunately, once Harry got sick, and then we found out that the nurse, of course, that we saw in the original Dexter, is the one that's poisoned him, trying to kill him off, because she swears that, this is what he wants. And of course, Dexter, of course, takes her out, and then eventually that leads into Dexter slowly becoming a serial killer, and he's actually learning his methods throughout the entire show. So we get to learn every detail of how Dexter become this great serial killer in all the original Dexter, and we get to learn all of his methods, even get answers to other little small questions and stuff like that. And of course, you have, of course, a younger Debs, who is, of course, we get to see their early years of Dexter and Deb's relationship, and why they're so great together in the original series as brother and sister. And of course, she has her own plot going on in the background and stuff like that. And of course, we get to see the younger members of Miami Metro. So we get to see a young Laguetta, a young Angel, a young Masuka, and of course Harry Morgan himself. But there are some clearly missing characters that are not there yet. So we don't get to see a younger Dokes, and apparently we don't even get to see a young Captain Matthews, which Matthew was, of course, there in the timeline, which was weird that they didn't even reference him. It's like, oh yeah, Matthew's out all somewhere in a different department helping out, because we're so swamped with stuff over here. So every department is swamped on this stuff, so he's going to go help out somewhere else. This way he doesn't have to fully be in the story, but still a mention, because he's been friends with Harry for his entire career, which I thought that was weird. And of course the younger Dokes we don't get to see yet, but if the show would have continued, because unfortunately this show got canceled, which I hate that it got canceled, because it's actually a really good show. See the younger Dokes too, and kind of get to see more of the origins of how him and Dexter become rivals. Even though we had an episode in one of the later seasons of the original Dexter showing the beginning of that, but it would have been nice to see a little bit more of that too. But overall, I really do like the story. I like that we get a lot of context to a lot of Dexter, Brian, and of course Harry Morgan, and of course their whole relationship, what ultimately led into the entire events of the original Dexter, and of course Dexter New Blood. So yeah, that's all I really got to say about the story. So let's get to the character portion. We finally get to learn the complete backstory of Dexter's past, of how Harry met his mom, and we also get to see his brother. Spoilers for season 1, the original Dexter. We get to see Brian Moser. And we basically get to learn how Dexter basically grew up with the Morgans, of how, Harry tried everything in his power to keep him as normal as possible. But as Dexter started to go along, he started to become more and more, getting more into serial killer mindset. So he spends the entire series just trying to, trying to convince Harry to let him finally become a serial killer, because at first Harry's like, no, you're not ready, I can't have you do that, what if you get caught? Still, of course, trying to teach him the code and everything like that. But eventually, Dexter does get the okay from Harry, which we saw in the original series when he killed the nurse that was taking care of him when he was sick at the time. Of course, he did eventually recover, and then as Dexter is getting prepared to go to college, he runs into a young Vince Masuka along with his boss, and he ends up joining Miami Metro because they're like, hey, you're really good at solving these kind of cases and stuff like that. He was able to figure out like a case they were still kind of working on, and he was able to break it a lot easier and get them everything they need to eventually catch the person. So they was like, oh, why don't we just have him? He could be like an intern and learn the trade of being a blood spatter analyst. And that's what ultimately got Dexter into the whole that side of his story that we saw all throughout the original series of Dexter and all throughout the Dexter show itself. And we also get to see his beginning of his early years with Deb somehow, how he was trying his hardest to be there for her. And we get to see his awkwardness with girls and stuff like that. We get to see a lot of great things with Dexter in his early years of his life, because he was a very awkward kid because of his personality. That's what ultimately got him into wanting to eventually have a family and all this other stuff goes along. And we also get to see Dexter slowly becoming his older self by learning different ways to kill people, how to not get caught, and even answer a lot of questions that we had from the original series, while he's also trying to go after a new serial killer that is running around the city as well, along with another one that's also, but the second one is not going to get caught until way later on down the line. But overall, I did enjoy the new Dexter. He did a great job, and I wish that the show continued, because I would have loved to see even more leading up into Dexter's season one. So, but of course, we do have Dexter Early Cuts, which is a bunch of short cartoons that leads into it, but it does contradict some things even from this show. But next we have Harry Morgan himself. So this is the first time we actually get to fully see Harry. Of course, he is technically the main character for this season, even though Dexter is still Dexter. We get to fully see how he met Dexter's mother, his relationship with a younger Brian, the Ice Shark Killer, and we also get to see his relationship with Debs and how he's tried everything in his power to keep Dexter from going down the path of becoming a serial killer. Ultimately, he will fail because Dexter will become a serial killer, but thankfully, he is teaching Dexter how to do it in a proper way, obviously taking out bad people and not taking out anything. And one thing I find to be hilarious is that this is supposed to be around the same timeline when he met Evelyn, and they're supposed to have started up their relationship of them coming up with the code for Dexter. But of course, we don't see Evelyn at all. The show actually makes a joke about that. They don't even reference her. Like, oh yeah, the writers are like, oh yeah, we forgot. But we also get to see Harry's analytical side to the point where he was able to break the second big case of it, of a younger serial killer that just started out his career. And he's able to figure out who that person is, and it's a blast from his past. And he could have easily stopped this person there and then. That could have not led to everything that's going to happen in later seasons, but obviously he didn't. And then of course he's still trying to help out with the main case, which is based around a killer that's going after children. And once we find out who that person is, Harry does his thing and whatever. And I like that he also has a partnership with a young LaGuenta, and they actually do a lot with her in this series as well. And I really love their relationship with each other, and you can definitely tell that's how LaGuenta was able to eventually rank up really high, because her teaming up with Harry throughout this series as well. The next character we're going to talk about is Maria. Yeah, LaGuenta in the series, they do a phenomenal job with her. She was always a mixed character for me. I felt like the best of her character is still season 7 of the original show, But in this one, we get to see her analytical side. She's very intelligent. She's able to figure out things pretty easily. I love to see her early relationship with everybody at Miami Metro at the time. So you got a younger Angel, a young Vince Masuka, of course, a younger Dexter. And at first, she doesn't really like Dexter. At first, she thinks he's very weird. But as the series goes along, she ends up trusting Dexter because obviously Dexter's analytical side when it comes to blood spatter and just serial killers in general is able to help out a lot. And I like that she is one of the main people who would break the second killer case to be the younger serial killer. She was obviously one of the main ones to break that case because she always thought it was very weird that everything can get put on this younger serial killer, but it's obviously somebody else that's doing all the main ones, being the kidnapping and then the killings of the kid's case. And I love her relationship with Harry. You could definitely tell like Harry definitely treated her like a daughter, and I love their back and forth. And I like that she does try to stick up for him as much as she can, but they really do a good job when it comes to her in this series. And I wish that we got to see more. I definitely wanted to see her relationship with a younger Dokes later on in the series and how, they had their relationships and everything and just how they ultimately became really good partners and friends throughout the show. We also had many other characters we could easily talk about. The last character I am going to talk about is obviously going to be Brian Moser himself. So spoilers for Dexter Season 1. But Brian Moser is the secondary killer. I'm not going to reveal the main killer on the show. But Brian Moser, I really like. I loved him in this season. That's why I always say he is my favorite killer out of all the killers in Dexter. It's because this series actually finally gives us his full account of everything, because we only saw like glimpses of it when Brian was obviously in season 1, but we get to see that, of course, he was there during the murder of his mother, and he spent multiple years trying to find Dexter and trying to get back with him until he eventually figured out that Harry was the one that had his younger brother. And we also get to see his early years of him becoming a serial killer, and we actually get to see scenes of him meeting Dexter a lot earlier in the timeline than we thought back in like season 1. And I like that we just get to, and we get to see kind of his ideas that he's going to have in later seasons. But the only thing I didn't like is that because we know what happened to him in season 1, he's going to have to disappear from the series for a while. So if the series would have continued, maybe we would have had a little bit more scenes with him. But we know he has to be in a certain place just to lead into season 1. But I really love his relationship with not only Harry, but also with Dexter. And you can definitely tell, like, he is probably Dexter's one of his greatest adversaries throughout the entire series. We also get other characters too. We get to see a younger Angel. We get to see a young Vince Masuka. We get Dexter's boss of the series. And we also get to see a younger Debs throughout the series. But I'm not really going to talk much about each one of those characters, because they all had different plot lines and stuff, but nothing like too interesting. The characters I already spoke about are the main characters that have the best storylines in the whole show, and that's why I'm kind of sad that this series unfortunately did get canceled, because I definitely would have loved to see more of Dexter's original sin. Just seeing like everything leading up to season 1 would have been great. But overall, I did enjoy Original Sin. I think it is a great follow-up show, and it's probably one of the better sequels to a show, because we are getting good answers to questions we have. We get good setup for later seasons, and we also get even references to even deeper seasons in season 1, because there are characters that are mentioned that's going to play a big part later on throughout the series. But overall, I enjoyed it. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. I will catch you guys later. This your boy, Danny Rich, signing out. Love and peace, everybody. Don't forget to comment, rate, like the video, subscribe, and don't forget to check out the other Dexter review video. We only have one more left, and that is Dexter Resurrection. Alright, let's go.